Squadron. My name is Joseph.
I'm player number 2 on this Death Card adventure, Peter.
And our silent but also musical partners are come to you every week. They are Ian and Sarah. They are the ones that actually created the purposefully bad recorder intro that you hear with all of our episodes. They also did a even more banging version for our Picard episodes that we did
So good.
until we couldn't anymore. It's perfect.
Perfect. A lot of other podcasts out there like have a very clear mission statement or that elevator pitch they read off at the beginning of every podcast. We don't do that. And I always feel silly when we try to do a recap on the off chance someone would start with that one episode. But it's got to be confusing, I think, for people to come and hear that fucking intro and not know it's supposed to be shit.
I think though it's in one sense it's like a litmus test. Like if you know that seems like that was bad on purpose, then you're our kind of guy or girl or whatever. So it's a secret test, a secret Voyager please passcode, if you will.
That it is. You started talking about Picard, which takes us to Kurtzman. We got some fucking skeletons in our closet on that one, but there is still new Trek coming out, and we haven't really talked about modern Star Trek in a couple of episodes, and I wanted to take a minute before we get started on this week's Voyager to touch base. And it's, I've been thinking a lot about this in the wake of us doing the Galaxy Quest Patreon episode, that it's interesting that when you say Star Wars, you're talking about Lucasfilm specific Star Wars, right? There's nothing else in the world that's Star Wars except for Star Wars, right?
Okay,
but you get into Star Trek, and it's like Trek isn't just Trek. Like Galaxy Quest, I think we agree is Trek, and Orville. I maintain that Orville is Trek.
It's
and I'm sure
more Trek than Trek has been lately, I would say.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure there's a couple people out there who might argue that Picard was somehow Trek.
They're misguided souls. We've tried to bring them to the light.
We tried to bring them to the light while also severely impacting our listener base. Much to our chagrin.
Yeah, what a terrible fucking idea that was.
Hey, look, we keeps it real. Anyways, there's a new show in the pipe, and that's going to be Lower Decks. And we have talked about Lower Decks before as kind of like the last chance we think that this current show running team might have to put some good Trek out there. It's being done by one of the Rick and Morty writers. More importantly, the feather in his hat to pay attention to is the Star Trek podcast TNG Season 8, which
I'm pretty sure
excellent.
Was it a podcast or just a Twitter account?
I'm sorry.
I think
it was a Twitter account. I didn't mean to say podcast.
Yeah. It was just a Twitter. It was a funny Twitter account of like goofy TNG episode ideas.
Goofy yet kind of accurate.
Yeah.
Kind of plausible.
The kind of jokes a fan would make,
Yeah.
And it definitely gave you that sense of when they picked that guy to do a cartoon that is inspired by the idea of the TNG episode Lower Decks, of focusing instead of on the high-ranking members of a ship on the low-ranking junior officers and their exploits. That it seemed like a good idea, Like when that got announced, that was definitely something I'm like, this could be finally something they explore that hits all the right notes. So, and then I noticed this week that the trailer came out.
Now, I'm notorious in avoiding trailers because I know what I'm going to watch. And if I'm going to watch something, I avoid the trailers because why rob yourself of the opportunity to see the material as it's initially intended in the episode and instead just kind of ruin the good parts in a trailer. If it's a movie I'm on the fence about, maybe I'll watch a trailer. But like all this new Star Wars stuff, I avoided like the plague. This one, we watched because we have a Star Trek podcast, and it's our obligation to talk about Star Trek. But I would say it cooled me off a little bit because I was pretty hot on the idea of this show. Seeing it, I would have liked it to have a bigger splash than it did, but Trek is Trek, and I'm willing to give everything a fair shot. The animation style, very Rick and Morty, but also very like Gravity Fall. It had a Nickelodeon feel. It felt a little too kid oriented for what is very clearly an adult cartoon. I can get around that. A couple of the voices seemed very Nickelodeon, very Disney Junior, which I've been subjected to a lot of courtesy of my daughter.
Right.
So I don't know. There's been some doubt thrown on my opinion that I had previously formed, but I'm willing to give it that shot. Where'd it land for you?
I hated it. I really did. I clicked on it, Furious Abandon, and couldn't have felt more disappointed, to be completely honest. It seems like a combination of the worst elements of Rick and Morty combined with that sort of we want to play it safe corporate kind of attitude as far as where they're going to go with the jokes.
Mm.
And so let me back this up a little bit. I feel like Rick and Morty was a fantastic show for 2 seasons. The first season was absolute gas. Second season was very good. But it fell prey to its own success and kind of sniffing its own farts. And of course, its fans are notoriously just like the worst people.
Yeah.
And all of these things started to combine where season 3 just felt like it was just wallowing in its bullshit way too much to be enjoyable. And I just stopped watching it. Like, just isn't fun anymore. It was fun because it was a, really dark comedy, zany adventure, adult cartoon. And then the second season kind of gave it a plot and gave it a little bit of heart and gave it a little bit of meaning. And it was just sincere enough that like you got invested, and then they just kind of kick their own dick into the dirt just to show how edgy
before
they
you go any
were.
deeper, I will say I've been watching Rick and Morty the whole time, and I think that it does make a strong comeback, and I've really enjoyed the past 2 seasons. So you might, if you have some free time on your hands, check back in. But I agree with some of the initial observations you've made so far that it does seem to be dipping its toes in the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, and so it seems to be wanting to do the least appealing parts of Rick and Morty, which is, hey, look at my shocking humor, moments, and it's just fine as a contrasting point to like the best jokes on Rick and Morty are the ones that are just make your jaw drop, right? Like I'll never forget the one where they do the virtual reality game where you play an entire lifetime of a guy, and like Morty comes in and is like, I had kids. Like he's obviously super bewildered by the experience, and Rick is super casual about it. Like those kinds of jokes are the best ones on Rick and Morty, that they're playing with these super sci-fi ideas and just go in a wild direction with it. The least exciting ones are like the easy jokes, and it was just filled with the easy jokes. And it was also trying to not be too edgy, because Rick and Morty season 1 and season 2, they are some raw ass shit that they did because no one cared, right? Because no one was paying attention to what they were doing. It was just like on Adult Swim. They're like, fuck, hope this is good, right? And it just took off. Once that happens, now all of a sudden it's much more managed property. Kind of tone it down a little bit, give it a little bit of a different direction. Well, this is a CBS thing. It's going to CBS All Access. Everyone knows everyone's going to look at it. So they don't want to go too far, right? They got to keep it kind of in a spot where no one's going to get offended, but you still want to it to be fun. And that's the worst kind of corporate overmanagement of a product like that yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be good at being a Rick and Morty clone, and it's not going to be good at being Star Trek, and I don't care. That's it.
Well, like you said,
That's my
I'm willing to
take,
give
man.
it a shot. Hopefully you're wrong. Hopefully we're both wrong. And
I'm going to let you watch it. I'm not going for wasting my time on anything else. Like, I'm not watching another second of Discovery. I would sooner die than watch another second of Picard.
wow. This
Yeah.
is
Oh
big
God.
talk coming from Joe the Completionist, who has spoken as a pride point that he has watched all official Trek media. This is radical departures.
Yeah, I know. I am the completionist, and I've stuck by that through some. Watching season 2 of Discovery was a trial, but I can't do it anymore. So if it's good and you tell me it's good, I might give it a shot. I'll say that. I'm not going to totally shut the door, but you're going to have to come out and say, Joe, my dear friend, I'm not lying to you. This is not a troll. I'm not trying to cause you pain. You should watch this. And then I'll watch it, and then I'll find out you lied to me, and I'll be like, I deserve that. Speaking of suffering that we deserved, what did we watch this week?
Season 5, episode 13, Gravity.
I fucking killed that intro, man. Whew! That transition was smooth.
Yeah.
Fucking like
butter.
that shit.
So good.
You know what's also smooth as butter? The reliability of our writers being able to shit out an episode where for some reason they make Tuvok the goddamn emotional focal point again.
I forget, did you say this was supposed to be a good episode at the end of our previous episode? Because I want to say you had...
I didn't remember it at all. Don't blame this shit on me. I see what you're trying to do. Don't you blame
I'm blaming
this shit
it on
me.
you because you're the one who picked up that we do Voyager. I want to do...
Okay. All right.
Or you want to do Voyager. We're here because of you. There is some great stuff here. There's some solid potential. There is a really cool Interstellar time dilation mechanic at play, which I was very impressed with. That
the sci-fi stuff is good,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I feel like Tom Paris just ruins the entire goddamn thing with a lot of help from Lori Petty's voice, which is
yeah. It doesn't help that this is basically a replay of an episode from season 3, Alter Ego, where Tuvok is, a person is in love with Tuvok, and Tuvok is obviously unable to return that person's affections. Different premise otherwise, but essentially the same story beats.
Was Alter Ego the lizard catfish?
Yes, the lizard catfish lady. And they're like going through the nebula, and she's lonely, and so she's in like a hip Polynesian surfer chick on the holodeck.
That was a good episode. This one was not. We open up with a strong point for the episode, and that is young Renaissance Festival Tuvok.
Yes.
We've got Tuvok back in his, I don't know, early teens, whatever that would be in Vulcan years. He's got some really rad Ren Fair garb on, and he has wandered into what appears to be a set piece from EverQuest 1. I believe it's something along the lines of the High Elf City.
Or is that just the cave where you did all your trading? Remember that? Like in EverQuest 1, before there was any like actual marketplace, there was just that cave where everyone just kind of stood there and like put, shouted emotes of what they had to trade.
Yeah.
Remember that?
That was Freeport Harbor, man.
Oh, okay. I thought it was I'm here. We're all about reminiscing here at Future Please, obviously. So I'm trying to reach back probably 23 years, 24 years.
EverQuest was really interesting, like the dawn of internet culture and society, and like so many, because it was such a wild west, like when left to their own devices, like how do people sculpt the world around them and make things, make a marketplace where there was no marketplace. So I've got a lot of interesting memories from EverQuest, and the beginning of this really did invoke a strong EQ feel because it was a hokey ass looking set with torchlight fire.
And a skeleton that will immediately murder you. Anyway.
Yeah. So let's just discuss this plot line real quick. In the earlier timeline, and this is Tuvok's Troubled Youth, very special episode, we find that Tuvok has fallen in love with a four-armed girl. What are they? Turellians? Is that what it is? So there's a Turellian hanging out on Vulcan with his his daughter, who he has enrolled in the local Vulcan high school, and Tuvok has infected himself with love, and as a result, he has abandoned logic and is giving into his desires and reveling in his exploration of emotions. And as a result, he gets kicked out of school, and his father disowns him, and he gets sent to I don't know, juvenile detention.
Yeah, he's basically in Vulcan shame prison.
It's not really a shame prison. It's I don't know what the right way to really describe this is, but there's a sage old logic wizard who is kind of like the last line of defense, where he reverse psychologies the wayward youth of Vulcan into rediscovering the necessity of logic. And they don't really focus on it, but with our previous viewings of Voyager, specifically Blood Fever, it's one way to look at the Vulcans is saying it's a shame that they don't embrace their emotion, and it's unfair that young Tuvok has these feelings and he's going to suppress them, and really kind of paints Vulcans to look like this emotionally dead asshole cult that forces these goofy values onto their children. Because at the end of every Vulcan-centric episode, you're always like, Spock had the excuse of like, well, he's half human. Like, you want to see those emotions burn through. You always want to see the person without emotions have the emotions and have that gratifying point. Tuvok's one of the rare examples of like a full-blooded Vulcan that doesn't have these physiological capabilities or reasons to explore that. And then we know, again, through Blood Fever, that like, yeah, when these guys don't stick to their logic, when they do get emotional, like it gets
bad fast.
Ugly.
Yeah.
Real bad. So this is really kind of his last chance, or his only chance, to get his life back on the rails, or he is going to turn into a real piece of shit. So, like I said, the old wizardly guy plays some reverse psychology, and
he's
basically
the anti-rape wizard, basically. He's the guy making sure that Vulcans that come to him, they don't rape nobody.
It's like Scared Straight, I guess would be the right way.
It's Scared Straight for Vulcans, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So by the end of the episode, through the flashbacks, we find out that he is able to reassert the logical governance of his thoughts. There's some very specific dialogue from the old wizard to young Tuvok that very literally says that love is the gateway drug that leads to Vulcan ruin.
Love leads to hate leads to anger.
Mm-hmm.
Anger leads to suffering.
Yeah, it's a real Yoda
some
moment.
Fucking Jedi shit. Yeah. I mean, I get
works
it.
Well.
I am making fun of it, but it actually does work.
It's good, and it does put a lot of the Vulcan hand wringing we see in these other episodes. Like, no, I can't give in to temptation. Like, it's legit, and these are people who have a genetic predisposition to go fucking ape shit and kill people and rape and pillage and whatever. And if they don't stick to this, they're a real problem. So,
and I think that's conveyed relatively well. That the emotion wizard, conveys like, I have emotions. All Vulcans have emotions. No one's suggesting you shouldn't have them. What he was trying to communicate to him is like, your future, if you choose not to control them, is to be terrible, and you don't want that. That's bad for everybody. It's bad for you. It's bad for everyone around you. You might murder some people, because you're just gonna be real angry all the time. It's gonna be bad. So you shouldn't do that.
They're gonna get ripped. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah. You're gonna bite a Klingon at some point, and then some just bad things will happen.
I thought all the stuff was good in this storyline. I think the young actor, and we're always quick to shit on the bad young actors, this kid holds his own and does well. I'd like to see him again at some point, whether it's as Tuvok or Tuvok's child or someone else completely different. But he was good, and Master Emotional Yoda Wizard was good. And yeah, That was a strong point in the episode, and this is all laying the groundwork for why 80 years later or whatever, Tuvok is so strict about never giving in to emotion. Where the episode itself picks up on is going to be a portion of Southern California that's rather arid with some big boulders.
Yes.
Not a water plant in sight. And we see a woman wandering the wastes in a Mad Max type skin tight leather outfit that's, I'm sure, a real joy to wear under the, the brutal sun.
Yeah,
She's got a
it
little...
looks basically like a discount version of a still suit from Dune. You know, it tried to kind of give that vibe off, but instead it just kind of
It
looks
looked like
it
the
looks like
Rubies
BDSM gear.
looked like the Rubies Halloween like costume in a bag version of the still suit from Dune. And then she's got a pillowcase wrapped around her head. I think we see her put out a little doodad that attracts a spider, and then she catches it with some sort of kitchen instrument. And as she's busy fiddling around with this spider, we see, believe it or not, a Federation shuttle crash land on the surface.
Everyone is shocked, and everything is terrible. And, you know, how could this happen? How could it happen that a dependable Type 2 whatever Federation shuttle crashes in the Delta Quadrant? These are sturdy and reliable pieces of equipment. It's just a tragedy.
The Fury of Starfleet. It was a Fury. Fury was the half-assed Pontiac Firebird that if you hit him in the back, they'd blow up, right?
I was going to say it's more of a Fiat. That's kind of my interpretation, but maybe more of a a smart car. Those tiny little box cars that look like they would just like absolutely fold like 7-2 unsuited in a highway accident. They look dangerous as hell.
Yeah, well, that's Starfleet for you. And only the best, right? When you've got 3 major members of your crew, why put them out in the Delta Flyer that's specifically built to put up with some Delta Quadrant bullshit? You're going to put them in the standard Federation death cart. Our desert bondage lady will go in to investigate, and this shuttle's pretty fucked up. Like the back door has completely ripped off. The internal control panels are all smashed up. They really fucked the shuttlecraft setup pretty good for this thing. She starts to pillage and plunder, and once you know it, old Tom Paris comes walking back in, gets mugged. We get a good throwaway line in there that what is it? Robbery seems to be a local pastime.
Yes.
She steals his med packs, and then as she's wandering away, she gets robbed by some guys who, what do I call them? The Crusties, I think. The Crusties are like lizard-headed, scabby, crusty-looking guys.
Yeah, they look somewhat familiar. They kind
of Jemadari,
like,
actually.
No, they weren't. Well, I guess like I associate a very specific look with the Jemadar since they're such a major figure. They kind of look like an amalgamation of a lot of other Delta Quadrant crusty-headed dudes. They weren't remarkable in any way, I guess is the way I would describe them, if that makes sense.
So he is in some real trouble, and we're back to the season 5 disposable asshole alien races, right? Started in Night with the garbage men.
Of course. The best of the disposable bad guys who are literally polluting space.
Disappointing of it. These guys will have a very terrible fate awaiting for them with no compassion from their friends still up in outer space. But we need to know that they're bad guys. So they surround her. It's clear that they've got no good intentions for her. But before they can finally close the gap and take her hostage to do all sorts of terrible things with her, a Vulcan ninja flips onto the scene.
Yeah, we get a pretty rad fight scene with Tuvok laying down the all-star moves of Star Trek karate on all of the scalehead. I think the race is completely unnamed. I don't think they actually even get a name.
They're the
whatevers. The Scabbies. He lays a fucking beating on the Scabbies, is what I'm saying. He just goes full, sweaty, back alley, bewilder kung fu mode, and it's great.
No, because back alley bewilder fights, and we're talking about random thoughts, is where Tuvok gets accosted by a couple of unemployed J.C. Penney sales associates who managed to somehow beat the superhuman ninja machine to a pulp, as opposed to here where he like kicks the shit out of like a dozen Mad Max scavengers. It's interesting that you just brought up random thoughts too, because I was about to say, like, every time Tim Russ or Tuvok is involved in some sort of action sequence, it's always good. You jump back to was it season 1 or season 2 where portion of the crew gets replaced by like celestial possession.
That's season 1. Yeah, that was the one where Chakotay is trying to like spiritually guide everybody, using the Oregon Trail, and we find out that there's a security camera in med bay
for that one episode.
For that one episode. Not later when the doctor is trying to make sure he doesn't get tampered with. No, not then. He has to set up his own.
Well, he doesn't
spy
trust that
camera.
he needs spy tech for that one. But that was like a really, really good fight scene with phasers and like all sorts of sweet stuff. And
that is still probably the best fight scene in the whole show. Like legit, like the fight choreography and the way it ends, where he just blasts the room with a hand phaser on like
wide dispersal.
Like that is still the best fight scene I think we've seen in the whole show.
I cannot dispute that fact, and I would say that short of Picard's early entries, when Dash or whatever is fighting the Romulans. And again, Picard had a much different theme and budget and action choreography to 2020 standards. Like, I won't take anything away from the fight scenes in Picard. Aside from Picard, that episode of Voyager that we were just talking about, that's probably the best fight scene in like all of pre-Picard Trek, which is crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else in Berman era Trek that beats that, and nothing is coming to mind as far as like the choreography is concerned.
Yeah. So Tim Russ,
and for all of my hate for everything else, that the pilot episode of Picard's fight scenes were gas. They were great.
They're fucking amazing, man. The ones where the Tal Shiar gets fucked up by the regular Tal Shiar vineyard dudes, like that was dope. Yeah. With guns taped all over the place.
Yeah, like literally the Tal Shiar guys just littered the entire chateau with firearms for just such an occasion.
Those guys were great. All right, and that's where we got to stop talking about Picard, otherwise it's going to get ugly. So again, great fight, and Tim Russ, when he gets involved in this stuff, and I think it's again the dedication he has to like the Vulcan bullshit buy-in as an actor, and that he's actually a fan and wants to see it done justice. Like, pretty cool. So he kicks the fuck out of all these guys, and then puts his hand out and says, "Hey, I want to be your friend. We found out earlier in the episode that something happened and the universal translators don't work," which, again, I don't really know where the universal translators exist, if they're built into the comm badges, if they're implants in the ears, whatever. But both Tuvok and Tom do not understand what this lady is saying, but he gets her to go back to the shuttlecraft. They reunite with Tom. Tom's like, whoa, she just ripped us off. He's like, well, she's on our side now, and we need to get the fuck out of here because there's more baddies coming. And odds are she's been here longer, and she's probably got a good lay of the land and someplace safe to go. So off they go to what will become some sort of downed cargo transport van that, for whatever reason, still has a working force field. And for whatever reason, in this Mad Max hellhole full of violent hunter gangs, they have not just made a permanent camp outside of her little fort to wait for her to put the shields down and jump her.
This lady is named Nas and is played by, as you mentioned, none other than Tank Girl herself, Lori Petty.
Yep.
Who has the world's most annoying voice.
Great for Tank Girl.
Fantastic for Tank Girl. Perfect for that movie. Perfect for Orange is the New Black. But boy, oh boy, did I hate it here. I hated it so much, Peter.
I didn't think we would get a worse famous 90s star than what's her face from Future's End. Damn it, what's her name?
Virginia Madsen?
No, the fucking comedian that was the Space Observatory that was working for Ed Begley Jr.
Oh, Sarah Silverman?
Sarah Silverman. I didn't think we could do worse than Sarah Silverman, but then we played the Andy Dick card, and now if there was one voice out there worse than Andy Dick's, it's Lori Petty. And
yeah, I mean, well, let's be real. If we're ranking annoying Voyager guest stars, I thought that Sarah Silverman was fantastic, and Andy Dick was perfectly cast as an awkward robot man. Like, they're clearly better than Lori Petty. Lori Petty was just fucking annoying.
yeah, and it's such a soft touch role too, because it is going to turn into Tuvok's love interest, that having someone with a electric can opener for a voice.
Yeah, like, oh, just why her?
I think it's that, they were anxious to jump on any big name and work it in wherever they could to get those eyeballs.
Is she a big name, though? I mean, like, Tank Girl is the biggest thing she did, and it was a bomb movie that came out, what,
95?
So, and like 4 years before this, because this was 99?
So, she's still a very recognizable name, and she's depreciated from her peak by 5 years, which puts her into UPN budget brackets. And, I don't blame them for trying to play that popularity card. But boy, it's distracting from here out. The other thing that's distracting for me is the turtlenecks. I hate these fucking purple turtlenecks that they use in Voyager and they used on Deep Space Nine. I think the uniforms as a whole are ugly and terrible, and a big part of it is these turtlenecks. And like, as this episode goes on, we find out that there's like 3 different layers to the uniform. There's the black jacket with the division colors on the shoulder, and then they have like a long sleeve turtleneck, which magically becomes a zip down purple jacket with a zipper that does not exist, but will magically appear as they zip it down. And then they've got the tank tops underneath. And we will be spending quite a bit of time on the surface of this planet. I think they end up being there, 3 months?
Yeah, I think it might be longer.
It's at least 3 months. And the takeaway in all of this is that the real crappiness of network television throwaway episode rears its head, and that there's zero continuity here. Nobody's hair gets an inch longer. Tom never has a beard. And these guys are just wearing the same clothes every day, all day, in and out. I don't see any wash machines. I don't even see any fucking river to like wash your clothes off in. So it's some real half-ass passage of time that we get treated to here. And yeah, these turtlenecks are front and center the entire time. I hate them. I don't know why it stands out as such a big part of this episode to me. But between those and Tank Girl, that can be our episode name: Tank Girls and Magic Zippers.
I like that title, and I kind of almost just want to spend the rest of our time talking about the forgotten gem that was Tank Girl. I don't know if people even know about that movie.
They have to.
I think they do. I think people know about it, but
I thought the first scene of showing Nos, where she puts that like crinkled out, like it kind of looks like Tremors, right? Like the thing that attracts the spider out, right? It makes some sort of seismic activity. The spider comes out and she hits it with this like 3-pronged doodad that like catches the spider. And when she pulled that thing out initially, I'm like, man, that really looks like those things from Tank Girl that the bad guy would jam into people and it would suck all the water out of it. So when it turned out to be fucking Tank Girl in the thing, I was like, whoa, like that had to be intentional, right?
Oh, guy, I guess you're right. Yeah, that had to be intentional. Tank Girl seems like the kind of movie that has fans in like that work in the industry, you know?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Anyway, if we haven't made it clear, if you've never seen Tank Girl, you should watch it. It's peak mid-90s. It's actually based off a comic book that no one ever fucking read. It's got everybody in it. Like fucking Iggy Pop is in that movie. I want to say
McDonald.
Ian McDonald is in it. Ice-T
From
is
Generations fame.
in it. Yeah,
Was
I mean it is. Oh yeah, he was the. He was. I hate to put it so. He was the one black guy. Like, it's just true.
Yeah, it was a good one, and you should go. It's interesting that Tank Girl never really gets banded around as one of the comic book greats. I always go to Blade as my favorite comic movie, but
Blade is the whole reason the MCU exists.
absolutely,
There was because I know that was Kevin Feige's first production job. It was like Marvel trying to do their own movies, sort of. And obviously they worked with New Line on it and that sort of thing, but they were more like directly involved for the first time. And that rave scene is just like all timer as far as like a start of a movie is concerned.
Was working in the movie theater when that came out, and my girlfriend who worked in the cafe and I would go in and watch that rave scene every time while we had the movie.
Who was the woman that played the vampire at the beginning? Tracy Lords. I knew it was somebody like famous, but not as an actress. That was Tracy Lords.
Of course, you know her from her DJ career. Absolutely not as a porn star.
No, definitely not as a porn star. Okay, so
there's a fourth person in this little trio that we have now. Because, as I said, we put our most important people in that Type 2 shuttle, which crashes, and that is Tuvok, your security chief, which whoever cares about that. It's your best pilot, and then also your backup doctor, and then your primary doctor. We got the EMH in there, and he's got his little, hypertech thing. I don't know. They never really say what the fuck they were doing in that shuttle in the first place. Like, what would bring those three people together in a death cart? But his emitter got damaged, and Tom, the scene where they're putting the emitter back together, like, I got a question for you, Joe. Is Tom Paris a Mary Sue?
Ooh.
Because...
I know where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Okay. He is the best pilot in probably all of Starfleet.
Correct.
He is the only other capable medical professional on Voyager.
That is correct.
He is a accomplished holodeck holo designer. He is an expert mechanic in 20th century combustion technology, as well as retro vacuum tube crap that he used to fix Satan's butthole or Satan's robot. And also, he is a warp theory propulsion expert, as we found out in the trans warp episode Threshold. And he's apparently better at fixing small electronics than the Vulcan is. So, like, yeah, he's got some personality quirks and is a fucking convict. Oh, I'm sorry. And he's an expert survivalist in ultra-violent
space prisons. Yeah.
Space prisons, and he knows his way around a prison shank. Like, and he's really good at, like, pulling guns on demigods. Q in the Gray, thank you. So, yeah, he's got some real personality quirks, but, like, is there anything he's not good? Oh, and he's a ladies' man.
I guess he's not good at not going to prison. Like, that's his character flaws. He just keeps winding up in jail, like, when he got trapped on Space Botiker's, ship, jail.
Mm-hmm.
All of the shoot, jail. 30 days, jail. Like, he just has his flaw. His flaw is he can't avoid jail.
That is his key to being a Mary Sue. Some Mary Sues always know the answer to fix the problem, whatever it is. Tom's Mary Sue power is, on top of the fact he's good at everything, it's he can always get dragged off to a jail situation, which always indirectly resolves whatever the main conflict is. I think if you were to look at the multiverse and all the other different way timelines could have played out, I bet you most of the times, if Voyager crew members hadn't been dragged to jail, they wouldn't have ended up coming out on top by the end of the episode. So I think that's like his long shot Scarlet Witch mutant powers. If jail's involved, they're going to win at the end of the day. But he's an expert tech, and he fixes the doctor, and the doctor pops back in and is like, what the hell's going on? And they're like, yeah, we crash landed and it sucks. And also, apparently, now battery is an issue for you, so we cannot have you on all the time. And it's going to be sad because you're going to have to live in the off mode for a very long time.
It's their way of, being able to use him sparingly rather than like have the entire plot of the episode solved by, let's send our invulnerable hologram to go do it, which at least they provided a reason why they had to turn him off. Like that, apparently mobile mode on the emitter does have like limits as far as how long he can stay active on it, which makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. I believe 100% that thing can't operate indefinitely.
I'm thinking about that crash landing. And if you look at the shuttle damage, like, it's ridiculous that anybody even managed to survive that thing when the whole ass end
the whole
ripped.
thing is just like completely falling apart. Like, what the fuck? Why the fuck are Tom and Tuvok alive at all? This
Like,
bullshit.
Don't show the shuttlecraft that banged up. That'd be like, the only person who got hurt is the guy made out of like 29th century hypertech. I was thinking about it too, like, shouldn't the doctor be able to be whatever he wants? Like, shouldn't it be like some Super Friends crap where as they're going in, like, he can Wonder Twin power and like turn into a big pillow and just catch everybody in his, like, a big beach ball that just bounces harmlessly off the walls? Why does he always have to be just the EMH?
Do you remember in this episode when Tuvok asks for a damage report on the shuttle while they're in it? And it's like, I don't know why Tom didn't just like turn to the gaping hole that is like the roof and say, I don't think it's gonna fly anymore, Commander. I think we're stuck. I don't know why. Maybe because we go into space. In this, we would suffocate.
We got a lot of new sunroofs, man. I don't think this is going to look very good for us.
Let's summarize the bad part of the plot quickly. Okay.
Tom Paris.
Yes. Tom Paris is the worst person to be stuck on a planet with when Tank Girl wants to fuck you. Like, that is guaranteed solid gold worst person. Like, he's just filled with bad advice and being an asshole.
Yeah. Yes and yes. They have had Tom and Tuvok at odds in the past, and they have been very cordial at other times. And I think Tom knows that Tuvok has pulled him out of a couple hairy situations. And at the end of the day, Tuvok mostly has Tom's back. So I think Tom's really an unnecessary asshole through a lot of this. And there's a lot of conflicting shit that happens in here that I'm just going to say is bad writing. Right? Because as we find out, as they are stuck for months on this planet, Tom starts lecturing Tuvok when it becomes clear that, hey, Tank Girl's DTF, right? And he's like, listen, you need to throw it in there because we're never getting back to the ship and this is our life now. And then Tuvok's like, hey, I'm married. And he's like, it doesn't matter. You're never going to see her. And it's kind of the same talk he's given a few other people before about, this is life now. We need to get used to it and whatever.
Yeah, I think he had the same conversation with Harry at one point.
Yes, he did, because Harry has Cave Woman girlfriend, right?
Yes, he does, yes.
Who has never been mentioned since Space Cougar Planet, I want to say. We get through all of this, badgering that's coming out of Tom, but it's like, it seems really hypocritical. Bad boy Tom, how is he going to sit there and point the finger at Tuvok? Like, Tom should be the one who is going after Tank Girl. Maybe Tank Girl shot him down. Maybe that's a scene that had to happen. But like, why would Tom care so much about Tuvok hooking up with her and not try to do that himself? And the excuse, the only excuse there is, I miss B'Elanna and I love B'Elanna, and that completely undermines his entire point of attack on Tuvok's reasons for not going after her.
So, you could read into the idea of maybe Tom thinks that they're going to get off this planet, that Voyager's going to... I think, in fact, he says that he expects that Voyager will come get them at some point. And early on, maybe that changes. But, like, Tuvok's never going to possibly see his wife again, no matter what, was, I think, what he was trying to say. Like, there was a chance that Tom would see B'Elanna again at some point. But... next to no chance that Tuvok sees his wife. So it's like, he's like, come on, man. If your wife is as logical as you, she's like gone and shacked up with another guy by now anyway. So you might as well get it in there. And it's stupid, and it's still terrible, and it's bad writing, and he comes off like this complete dickhead. But at least I think there is a reason, quote unquote, for it.
Again, I think that if anybody had this, and here's what I would like to see in this episode, right? This is going to shock you that I'm going to bring it up. This should have been a Tuvok Neelix pairing.
I'm shocked.
I know that's the last thing you ever. I think that initially it should have been Neelix on the shuttle instead of the Doctor, and it should have been Tom, Neelix, and Tuvok. Neelix has a very unique relationship with Tuvok in the wake of Tuvix, which nobody wants to admit happened, but did happen, and I want to see them in these stressed situations. And then, I talked last episode about how it's been a long time since we've seen bro time between Neelix and Tom, and I think that's very earned. But had this conversation happened and this badgering come from Neelix towards Tuvok with a little bit less like bro put it in and a little bit more you need to adapt emotional fluidity, because Tom just basically comes off like he's like, dude, why aren't you putting it in? Like, he might as well, like, been like, what are you, gay or something? Like, that's almost the degree this thing goes to, until he twists it at the end. So this is about this girl's emotions and this, and it's so uncharacteristic for Tom, but it's right in Neelix's wheelhouse. And again, Neelix knows Tuvok perhaps better than Tuvok knows himself, and I think you could have had some really cool character growth, and it would have made sense that Tuvok or Neelix wasn't trying to move in on this girl, and I think this entire subplot would have worked way, way better. But instead,
I completely agree with you. Upon reflecting on what you've had to say, Neelix would have been a far better choice here, and anything that he would have said would have been much more credible than anything Tom had to say. Even if what Tom said was less douchebaggy.
Yes.
I don't know if it could possibly have been any worse than what he said, so fucking if I know.
And first Tom comes in with like, hey, hook up with her because your wife's not going to ever be around again. And then he comes back and says, listen, man, I'm so sorry that, I hurt your feelings saying your wife's dead and you're never going to see her again. But then let me pick the fight back up. Like, it's the shittiest apology ever. And then later on, there'll be an encounter where Tuvok's trying to meditate on the edge of a rock, and Tom comes and starts more shit, and like gets real confrontational and just, again, way unnecessarily shitty. Like, I feel that with all of the growth Tom has had over the past couple episodes, that this is some real first season Tom we're seeing here. It feels very uncharacteristic, and again, if it's going to be first season Tom, he should have been trying to go after Nas himself. So, but the second round is like, show emotion, give up on logic, blah, blah, blah. And that's where we have like the bridging of why do we have all this early Tuvok footage? And Tuvok's like, here's a story about how I fell in love and abandoned logic, and it almost, led me down a real path of destruction, and I can't abandon my morals. And then Tom's like, oh, okay.
It's a perfect example of what happened. Like, that explanation is perfect. Like, oh, okay.
That's a direct quote out of Memory Alpha now. I think it's fucking summarizes the whole thing right there.
Speaking of Memory Alpha, man, it was just like normal Memory Alpha content. They just cannot blow themselves hard enough over this episode. I do not get it. The romance never, I hate to say, like, the romance never is credible because the actress playing the person has such an annoying voice that I just don't want it to be on screen. But that's really where I was at. Like, all of her lines, I just wanted to die when she spoke. Like, not only is she, it's one thing when she's speaking in normal, complete sentences in English, but for most of the episode, it's very, like, halting, I'm learning how to speak English.
I want to read you my note. Okay. Tank Girl's, like, the entire her learning English, she's basically talking like Rocky Balboa in the middle of a boxing match. It's the laziest.
Except like this. Hey, oh my God. Like, I love you too much. I want to kiss you.
Adrian. It's terrible. And I don't blame Tuvok for not wanting anything to do with that. Of course, Tuvok does. And there's this terrible, conflict in him of what his heart wants and what his emotions want versus what his logic will allow him. But again, for what should have been a very soft touch, tender, endearing role, um, you've got something that's about as charming as a pincushion, with
Tank
hepatitis
Girl.
on the needle tips. It's
Tank Girl is hepatitis. All right, that's an even better
who looked
title.
at Tank Girl and said, "You know what? There's a romance waiting to happen here."
Especially because they did this episode already and they did it better with
Yeah.
Alter Ego.
Well,
Like all that episode was missing was like the flashback scenes, which I agree added a lot, to the kind of lore of Vulcans. Like they've done this, and it's like, why do it again? Like this actually would have been more interesting if they just had Tom have to deal with like this lady coming on to him and be like, "Oh, hey, yo, no, I got a girlfriend," and like
what a great
actually,
growth episode for Tom.
yeah, actually showing his commitment to B'Elanna by like thinking he's stranded here, be like, "No, I love her, and I'm not gonna betray her memory, even if I don't think I'm gonna ever see her
Let's talk
again."
about that, Joe, because Tom was a shitbag. Tom was a womanizer. Tom fucked all of the holograms twice. Tom was
Possibly
always.
both Delaney sisters, like you never know.
I'm willing to put money on that. And then Tom falls in love with B'Elanna Torres and has a very awful abusive relationship, a mutually abusive relationship. Hot ass 7 of 9 shows up. Tom never even has to come to grips and say, like, man, do I want to be with this stacked blonde or my hot rod girlfriend who I seem to hate? Like, the closest he ever comes to having to address the fact like that he is monogamous with her and not a cheater is Vis-a-Vis, where he has like a bromance with the test pilot who chokes him out and steals his body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I would say there was maybe some emotional cheating that could have been there, but they very clearly avoid any sort of sexual or real relationship there. So like the fact that Tom ends up this perfect monogamous boyfriend is very unearned and a terrible oversight, I think, for season, what was it, 4 was where they really start doing that.
I think so, yeah.
So whatever, it's stupid. And then there's going to be some scabby attacks later on, and of course as time lines up, it's the worst possible moment. Switching over to the cool part of the episode, out in space we find out that Voyager has not heard from the shuttle in an hour, and they go to look for it, and they almost get sucked into a space butthole that did not show up on sensors, and they very narrowly get out. They find out that this is some sort of pretty cool interstellar booby trap-ish deal,
Yeah.
where there's a whole sector, there's like a whole solar system inside this microcosm. And while they're in astrometrics figuring this out, some space scabbies come along and slap a tractor beam on Voyager, and we get a pretty cool shot of Harry Kim with his big boy pants on.
Harry actually is manning the bridge as the officer in command when the scabby supervisor shows up. Literally, he's the scabby supervisor. I do agree that the plot of Interstellar has a strong resemblance to several of the tropes here. There's a black hole. There's a number of planets in the black. The difference here being is that this is like basically a pocket of subspace that there's a planetary system in for no reason anyone can figure out. They're like, everyone is like, this is fucking weird, which is cool, right? Oh, we found a weird thing in space we can't explain. That's what we do. But yeah, like the time dilation part, all of makes you wonder. like, did you guys watch a little Star Trek and think no one would notice? Like, it's a little close here, boys. Like, but it's a cool sci-fi idea, and it's a shame that this cool idea gets so wasted on an A plot, because that is terrible. Like, this is the B plot. The B plot is like not much time passes on Voyager. Like a couple days is months for the boys on the planet. And they're dealing with the scabby supervisor who just wants to blow it up because ships keep falling in and they keep losing people. So they're
like, and again, so this is where I get pissed at the episode and season. 5 of Voyager is that you have introduced a very two-dimensional alien antagonist that isn't really that unreasonable until they have to hit like that hard programming line where they're like, now we must ignore common sense and be needlessly antagonistic. For the space garbage people, it was dumping poison into space rather than adopt sweet Federation technology. For these guys, are like, hey, listen, there's a huge, like, there's a Niagara Falls of death over there. This is like Chernobyl up in here. You guys need to be real careful. We're putting that tractor beam on you, not to like start shit, but because you're going to get sucked in and we're trying to save you. And they're like, well, we don't need your help. And it's like, well, how nice for you. We're trying to do you a favor. Try and show a little gratitude. And they're like, we think we got a shuttle in there. And like, yeah, we got tons of dudes in there. This thing is a fucking big problem. We've actually been dispatched to like close the hole up so no other people die in there, which seems pretty fucking legit, right? Like there's no way to get anything out. And all of Janeway, scientist Janeway, I like seeing scientist Janeway. I've really come to appreciate like having a dedicated scientist. You know, Picard was I don't even want to use Picard as a fucking example and stuff. You get, I don't know what the hell Kirk was supposed to be. You got a badass.
Kirk was a tactical officer, which is reflected in his command style. Sisko was an engineer. Picard was a diplomat, and Janeway's a scientist. There's actually been a good mix amongst all of the Berman era Trek, or all the Trek leaders, as to what their backgrounds are.
So, you got scientist Janeway on it, and she's like, man, all the stuff I'm seeing on this says it's a one-way street in there, and there's no way for us to fix this. So, again, the Scabbies' strategy of collapsing the entrance and making this part of space safe again, pretty legit. But then, when they shoot that multiphasic probe off, is that the goddamn probe from Night?
Yeah, that's the probe, man. That's the probe from that they had to retrieve on the planet with
the space race that cost dozens of lives that nobody ever explained why this probe was so important. Like, I'm glad to see it getting some use. They shoot the probe in there. They're like, oh my God, our guys are still alive. There's a whole fucking solar system in there. There's like 5 planets, and our guys are on one of the planets. So who even knows who's still in this thing? Like, this is some pretty high stakes on this. And Janeway goes, listen, I think we got a shot at getting our people out of there. And the guy's like, well, you got 24 hours and I'm going to collapse a hole. And they're like, she's like, but nope, thumbs the rules. So we have very little 7 of 9, which I have to imagine the rest of this season is going to be real 7 heavy, because we have not seen a lot of 7 in what feels like a few episodes now. But they say, here's our plan. Great. Let's get things rolling around. And wouldn't you know it, those damn blue collar space scabbies, they decided to start early because they were ready. And this is where they start really hitting peak 2-dimensional villain status. Like, where the Voyager's in open communications, like, we can get our people out. We can get your people out. And they're like, nope, don't care. We're just going to push forward and try and trap everybody forever and start shooting our lasers at the hole. Like, this is time and again. No, not time and again. What was it? What was it? Goddamn, the candy corn tragedy. That
was time and again.
Was that time and again?
That was time and again.
Yeah,
the candy corn I mean, you nailed it. That was correct. I was like, wait a second. When nailed is he referencing
this? Janeway nailed that space hole with a fucking phaser, and that's what these dudes are doing, just shooting guns in the hole, and that's how they're gonna fix it. Which, sure, whatever, seems legit. And that's when we really become aware of the time dilation that's going on. So what has been 24 hours for Voyager has been at least 3, perhaps 4+ months for Tuvok and co. And she says, hey, they shoot a message in, which it's cool because it's like super slow motion, so they have to speed it up. And it says, be at these coordinates in 8 hours, 10 hours, because we're going to beam you out of there. The entire pocket reality is collapsing, so we get one shot at this make it count. And once you know it, the planet-side space cabbies pick that exact moment to really start their nonsense.
The way that it's working out is that there's an extended firefight on the planet at the same time there's this quick exchange that's happening in space. And they do a good job of cutting between the two and to kind of keep the action going. But the problem is that a lot of the details of what happened on the extended firefight on the surface It's never quite fleshed out or explained, but
You get some
they
real
tried.
stupid decisions. The first being that Nas is going to go out and try and keep the shield generator working by herself, which is just a setup for her getting overwhelmed. I really had my money on her dying in this episode. I thought this was going to be Tuvok's emotional baggage, is that, you know, her blood was going to be on his hands. So I was surprised that she ends up living, but she goes off on her own stupidly, and, you know, the shield fails, and then Tuvok's going to come out and whip some more scabby ass because that's what he was born to do. Meanwhile, in the, you know, the Voyager scenes, like, space scabs are shooting the guns and like, no, stop, we can save everybody, we got like legit plan on this. Never any point to discuss like, hey, maybe we should just fuck these guys up and make them run home. Like, we got 3 people tied up in this thing, and who knows however many hundred other people trapped in here. Like, let's just beat these guys' ass, leave them adrift, we'll beam everybody out, give them their people back, and then collapse a butthole. But this is,
Or
you know,
you would think that the scabbies on the planet would be like, hey, like at any time of like, we're all stuck down here together, we're all space people, maybe we can figure out a fucking way out of here. Like, at no time does a single scabby on the planet attempt to negotiate. They might as well just be just goons. You know, they're just
going back to
animals.
EverQuest, they're just fucking
They're just
piranhas in
mobs.
the river
Yeah.
trying to fucking bite you. They're mindless orcs attacking the high elf city. It's stupid. It's fucking stupid. And for all the other times that Voyager seems quick to, you know, quick to draw and keen to stay in a prolonged firefight it doesn't need to be there for, Janeway and Chakotay don't even discuss like shooting warning shots or anything. But by the end, everybody gets together. They beam 4 people out of there. You know, Tank Girl gets to come along. Everybody else on the planet, who is, you know, dozens and dozens of people, and that's just the space scabbies. Who knows who else is fucking living on these things or what's going on those other planets? Those all collapse. Everything dies. It's some real depressing stuff. Maybe if they really stop to give a fuck about it, which they don't. Harry's there to receive him in the transporter room. He seems amazed that there's a extra person beaming up, which I don't know why
Like,
that was a big.
what? Why? How could that be that you found some fucking life form on the planet that's coming with you? That we've never done that shit before in
Oh my
Starfleet.
goodness. You know, there's not even an empty gesture of like, you should stay with us and be part of the crew. They're just like, all right, we're gonna get rid of you. If we're not keeping Dr. Pell, we're not keeping Sarah Silverman, we're sure as fuck not keeping your expensive ass. So, all right, Tank Girl, we're gonna get rid of you. And rather than broaching any sort of like genuine emotional closure between you and Tuvok, not that it would be earned in the slightest, he's gonna slap a quick mind meld on you, and you're like, huh, okay, thanks. And then we
The
wrap things up.
the mind meld was Tim Russ's idea because apparently in the script he was supposed to give her a kiss and a hug, and in that respect, I actually think that was correct. Like that, he's like, this is the right way to like for him to communicate how he feels. I get it.
Sure.
But at that point, I don't fucking care. Like, I was just like, yay, it's over. I could have turned this fucking episode off. And that was my actual reaction to that moment was, is this it? Fuck, yes. All right, I'm done with this.
This took me forever to get through. Like, I want to say this episode was at least 3 hours for me to finish watching because the dishes needed to get done, and I'd rather play with my kids than watch this. This was
I definitely paused mine to give my dog a walk. Like that was what I did.
it wasn't terrible. You know, there was a
No,
lot of good stuff. It wasn't a waste of time. I think this is a great example of a Voyager bottle episode that just doesn't matter and there's no real growth to come out of it. There's some cool background on Tuvok, which his again, him being a complete character, it's interesting to see him in his incomplete earlier moments, whether it's back on the Excelsior or in emotional Jedi Wizards logic boot camp. But yeah, if you had given me Neelix in there, I think we could have had some real magic happen.
and then just some rando playing low interest. Just anyone but Tank Girl.
Yes.
That dragged it down more than anything. Any single thing, I just can't stand her voice. And you know, I aside from whoever that non-actress is that played the person who said JL all the time on Picard. Raffi.
Raffi.
Yeah, I almost forgot her name. That was a real blessed moment there. Aside from that actor, this might be the second worst person to be in Star Trek.
That's wow. That's potent, Joe.
I actively disliked her opening her mouth. I wanted to rip my ears off in displeasure. So
one last blowjob for Neelix on this one.
Okay. Well, we always like giving Neelix blowjobs here on Voyager, please. Go on.
Dude, that fucking picture real quick. So we haven't talked about the trauma support group.
Yo, that was, talk about cursed images. Who the fuck did that?
I don't know. I want to
Hold
block.
on, I'm looking it up. I'm looking that shit up right now because they deserve acknowledgement on the air for what they did. Okay, so the Voyager Police Trauma Support Group, it's
a Facebook group.
We pride ourselves on having a fun fan community. It's a closed Facebook group. Anyone can join. You just have to ask. We just keep it closed so people can't see what you post, your grandmother. And this is a perfect example as to why. Chris did this. And Chris posted a picture of a couple pieces of looks like oven roasted turkey on a piece of cheese on a couple on a piece of bread.
It's called a sandwich.
It's a sandwich. It's an open faced sandwich.
It's a turkey sandwich, yeah.
But the way that the turkey is laid out on the sandwich, if you were to put a head on it, it would look like the seductive back of someone with
looking over their
lump.
Shoulder and seeing some thick thighs and ass, and it's Neelix's head photoshopped on this fucking turkey sandwich. It is revolting. I look at some real raw, nasty garbage on the internet that is just the fucking worst, and I laugh about it. And I saw this goddamn turkey sandwich with Neelix looking in this, like the outer skin of the turkey where it's like oven roasted, this looks scabby going down, like that would probably look like what his ass looked like. And it was so like my stomach turned and I felt like I was going to throw up. I had to stop looking at it. I hid the post. Like
I couldn't stop looking at it, and that is what disgusted me about myself.
It disgusts me about you too. There's something fucking wrong with you, man.
Chris, as an all-time cursed image, well done. That
I'm sick thinking about it. So, anyways, Neelix, who is forever now a slutty turkey sandwich. He's got this scrappy trader origin. He's fucked with the Kazon before. Like, it would have been really cool to see new Jack Neelix rear his head up again and be like, all right, guys, I'm going to show you what life is like out in the Mad Max post-apocalyptic shitty ruins living off of crashed spaceships. Like, they could have done some really cool stuff with this, and it's a shame they instead made Tom look like a real bitch, which isn't hard to do, as the writers have shown us.
Yeah. All right, let's close the book on this one, man. What are we watching next week?
Season 5, episode 14, Bliss, and we have a shot of Voyager flying over some frozen asteroids, which is basically out of the Voyager intro. Voyager discovers what seems to be a wormhole leading to the Alpha Quadrant and home. Images of Earth and letters from family elate the crew. Something tells me there's going to be some deception and that people are going to be getting jerked around. Joe, do you remember Bliss?
I do, quite well. It heavily features one of your least favorite things.
Tank Girl?
No. This is a heavy use of Naomi Wildman.
Well,
just want to make sure you go in with expectations
lowered expectations
that are tempered by the reality of a lot of Naomi Wildman. Great. I will say that it is a clever use of specific members of the Voyager crew for a specific plot orientation. That I think it uses Naomi Wildman for a good plot reason. So hopefully that helps. All right. Well, thanks to everybody listening to us here at Voyager Please. As Peter mentioned earlier, we did a special Patreon exclusive episode reviewing and mostly just discussing the cultural impact of the finest Trek movie, not a Trek movie, and that being Galaxy Quest. It should be up before the end of the month of July. If you'd like to get a crack at that, you can support us on Patreon. But don't feel the need. We just love to hear, we just love for you to hear us, to accept us into your ear holes. So listen and subscribe to us on whatever platform you wish to get your podcasts from, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, your RSS feed, whatever that is. And tell others. Share the podcast. Share it with your friends, because true hatred, it spreads like a disease. And on that note,